Hi, everybody. Welcome once again to Branco Broadcast. I'm Bob Branco. It's a real pleasure to have with us this evening Camille Petrecca. Camille is somebody that some of us know from Perkins School. She was a guidance counselor back in the 70s. But she's here to talk about another topic, how blind people in private schools who were attending high school at the time ended up in regular school during their senior years, and how that evolved and how that was beneficial. And so without further ado, let's turn it over to Camille Petrecca. Hi, Camille.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Bob. Thank you for inviting me. I first want to say what a privilege it was to have been at Perkins the 7 years I worked there. It was a dream come true for me, and I have wonderful memories. And I'm very grateful to God for the chance to work with all of you. Oak Hill was...
Well, we were glad to know you, Camille.
Thank you.
We were glad to know you. What I'm going to do is have you speak about your topic for 10 minutes or so, 15,
okay.
And then I'm going to have everyone ask you particular questions.
Great. Okay.
Bob, I just checked in.
Go ahead, Camille. Your turn.
Camille.
Oak Hill was a private school. It still sort of exists. It's not a school now, but for many years it was a school for blind children. They had a nursery in 1893, and they started out that way. When we were at the peak of the retrolental fibroplasia era, we were up to 160. Now, Perkins, I believe, was way past 400 in the number of enrollees at their maximum. 50 of us were day students, and 110 were residential. I was a day student, and I went, well, you'll know how old I am. I can't get out of that now, can I? 1952, kindergarten, graduated Weaver High School, which is a public school down the road from Oak Hill, in 1965. They had a program for us seniors. Not all the seniors went, only certain ones. Many of us who were going on to college, we got the chance to go there. And it had been running for, I guess, about 15 years. I'm really not sure when it started. I know it ended in June of 69. The economy was going down in that area of the city, and it wasn't deemed to be safe for us to be there. So unfortunately, they had to stop the program. The good thing about the program was I got over my shyness. I used to be very, very shy, because at Oak Hill we had classes of 10 or 12. At Weaver we had classes of 45. And I kept thinking, well, why isn't the teacher calling on me? And then it dawned on me, there's 43 other people. The year we went to Weaver, my friend Carolyn went with me, and she was from Oak Hill also, and she's in California now. And so there were two of us. The teachers were confident because they had taught us for many years, and we couldn't get away with anything. You know, they gave you homework, and you couldn't say, gee, I can't do this assignment. Well, actually, one assignment was in biology, which we had to take because we didn't have it at Oak Hill. We were studying Lepidoptera, which, for those of you who are scientific, knows the name for butterflies and moths. And the teacher wanted us to bring in 20 of them on a board. Well, of course, I couldn't do it, but my poor mother was out there putting the light on the front porch one Sunday night, getting me my assignment. Of course, I only got a C on it, but I wasn't going to say to the teacher, I can't do this. And, of course, as many of you know, you ended up overcompensating by doing extra well on the things that you could do well in and try to make up for it. The students were not just seniors, like I said. In biology, we had sophomores there. We could not get any books in Braille that had not already been done because it was our principal at Oak Hill. Her philosophy was that we needed to learn how to use readers. And that was hard because we had French. And we had 5 French books, and we had readers for the 5 French books. And we had Braille writers, and we had no tape recorders in those days, which I know is hard for many of you to fathom. But, well, you got through it somehow. The only book we had in Braille was biology. Now, the bad thing was we were in honors English, and we had 18 book reports to write and 18 compositions to write. So I was up till all hours doing homework. But it was a good thing, and you know, we could have gone down to the academic English level, but I wanted to major in English in college in those days. I was thinking of being an English teacher just for a few years in order to get guidance counseling credentials. But as it was, I went in a different direction and ended up doing liberal arts and going into the rehab counseling degree at my master's level and getting a liberal arts degree in English and psychology in the undergrad level. But as it was, we took honors English and we struggled through all the WordWell's SAT development programs and listening to our boring teacher talking about Colby College all the time because he had this son that went there. And that's well, anyway, he was a good teacher though. And then I had European history, and I passed on all my Braille notes to the following year's students so she would not have to slave over the Braille writer like I did. Of course, I used abbreviations like that I made up like 5-6C for country, but I told her what they were, you know. Anyway, we had first aid at Weaver, and that was fun. And I talked to people in other public schools, and they never had first aid. So that was kind of cool that we got to take it. The neat thing about having had the French 3 was that we had a language exemption test at college. So if you passed it, you didn't have to take a language in college. So that was cool, and I didn't have to take a language in college. The scary thing was I'd be in the cafeteria and someone would be talking to me, and I was so shy I didn't know they were talking to me, and I didn't want to answer because then I'd think they would say, "We're not talking to you," you know. So they'd go, you know, they'd ask me something, and I'd just sort of sit there. But, you know, then I realized, gee, I wish I could see this guy now 50-something odd years later and say to him, "I'm sorry I was so rude to you." But unfortunately, he did not attend the reunion I went to 2 years ago. The neat thing was, at Weaver, I was able to be a residential student. I lived 6 miles from the school, so I was a day student. But at Weaver, when I lived at Oak Hill, I was able to be with all my blind friends at Oak Hill, and we had fun. I had a lot of homework, but I did have fun when I wasn't doing homework. So it was a neat program, and I understand that at Maryland School for the Blind, they had a 2-year program. I was told that by someone who had attended a music festival. All of you who went to music festivals know how much fun it was. And in 61, it was at Oak Hill. 62, it was at NYI. In 63, it was at Perkins. And 64, it was at Overbrook. And at 65, it was in Batavia. And I got to be in the 65 Music Festival, even though I was not in chorus. But my teacher said, Mr. Hayes, who some of you might remember, said, "Well, if someone teaches it to you, you're welcome to go." Well, then, the Thursday night before the festival, my reader canceled, and I had midterm exams. And I said, "Oh, no, I can't go." But my dear house mother said, "I will read to you," and she did, too. So that worked out well. The Weaver program also was something I could put on my resume, and I think it helped a lot. My college was in Danbury. I went to Western Connecticut, which was 60 miles from home. They accepted me on probation because of my blindness only. I mean, I graduated like with honors and everything, and they said, "Oh, well, we have to put you on probation because of your blindness." That's how educated these educators were. But, you know, I got in there, and they took me off probation finally, but on my transcript it was in there, and I was like, that's not fair. But you know how people were in those days? Well, we always had to educate people. And it doesn't end. You know, even now, people ask the weirdest questions, like, where is your mouth, and how do you eat, and all that other stuff. But anyway, we got through it. You know, when you try to educate people, and you never know what the connections will be, and when they saw us, you know, maybe they hired a blind person later because we were in their class at Weaver, and maybe they, you know, were able to date blind people that they might not have dated, and maybe they just accepted us as people. And you can't put a price on that. We had 1,700 kids altogether in the school, so we had escorts to go from room to room because it was the hallways are crazy, and they would let us leave a minute before the end of class. And all the children wanted to escort us so they could leave early. So that was kind of fun, too. Anyway, I'm not sure how much time has elapsed. I don't have my watch on. So, Bob, do you have a handle on that? Is everybody there?
Yep.
Yes, we're all here.
Okay, so do we have a time?
No, unless you're finished. If you are, we can just go to the floor for questions.
Okay, well, we might as well then, because I think I've sort of run out of steam.
All right. Well, I thank you for your presentation. It was very, very informative and inspirational. We're going to start with Joni Leonard. Joni?
Hi, Camille. How did you take your exams?
Thank you for bringing that up. Somehow it missed my mind here. Yes, at Oak Hill, we came back to school, and the tests were given by the Oak Hill staff to us in the typing room.
Oh, so you typed them?
Yes.
I went to, I was mainstream in high school, and from kindergarten through ninth grade, I was supposed to attend. I was in a Braille class, and supposed to attend the regular classes in the public school, but there were some difficulties, and when I would rarely spend some time in the regular classes, of course, I didn't have books or anything like that, and the kids would take turns reading, and I thought they were so stupid they couldn't even read words correctly, because, of course, in those days you couldn't get very much in Braille, and I was told, I was 12 in 1952, and it was just at the time when the talking book, when the legislation had changed and they took adult out of the books for the blind program. So I was given a talking book, and I was told, you better learn to use talking books because you're not going to have the luxury of Braille books as you go through junior high and high school. And I said, but I want my books in Braille. Oh, no. You have to learn by listening. So that's my story.
And the brain processes audio material much differently. When you read Braille, it goes to the visual center, actually.
Exactly.
So you learn differently, and your brain absorbs things differently.
And I always was a visual learner, which is odd because I'm totally blind.
No,
but I always could remember where things were on the page in the Braille book.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But not the talking books. And I mean, I got used to them. I had to, but
that's quite common.
Yeah.
Okay, Peter Donahue. Peter?
Okay, I'm here. I just had to unmute. Question that I have, and some people have asked me, is did you attend Weaver for part of the day or the entire day? Because one of the things that comes up is, it's good that that the schools for the blind were integrated. We're trying to integrate some of their students into local high school programs, but you can't neglect the blindness skills aspect of it. So I'm just wondering if maybe how did that work? Was half of the day spent at Weaver and the rest of it spent at the Oak Hill campus, working on cane, travel, and Braille, typing, all the blindness skills that you need? Or how was that handled?
Oh, we had already passed our mobility training in the year before. I had finished mobility. And so we were at Weaver for the entire day, the entire public school day, because all of our blindness skills were pretty much mastered already.
And also, I was told when I was at alumni, I ran into a guy named Al Doherty, and I don't know when he graduated Oak Hill, but he told me that many of the students went to Weaver, but occasionally, sometimes there were situations where it was felt that that attending a public high school might be too much for some blind students, and they were. He told me that most of them went to Perkins for their senior year. I wonder if NYI might have picked up some of them too. What do you know about that?
I really have no knowledge. Oak Hill did run a program for the seniors who didn't go to Weaver, and they had their regular classes.
Okay, so they were doing it both ways. Okay.
Might have misled you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned biology. If you had Mr. Wilson, I remember him.
No, we did. I had him for algebra, and we had biology at Weaver
Oh, you had it Weaver. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I know Barbara Kekax taught a year of it as well. Like, she was my 5th grade teacher. I came in the 5th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now we go to Jan Colby.
Hold on a minute. I was fascinated by the fact that you didn't have your Braille books. I guess I was spoiled because they did most of my books in Braille when I was in high school. I had some on tape, but they were able to Braille. National Braille Press did a lot of it. And so I was fascinated by the fact that they didn't do that with you guys at Weaver.
They didn't want us to have them. They wanted us to use readers, to learn how to use readers.
I know that's fascinating. Now, did you get your readers were they other students, or how did that work?
They were people that Oak Hill recruited who read to us after we came back to the school.
Oh, okay. Because I had a reader that the city hired. She was she didn't know Braille. She was she actually had been a teacher, and she was ready to retire, but she was in charge of getting home teachers for people that, were medically out of school for various reasons and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Jan? All right.
No, not that I know of. Unless,
I'm sorry, Jan, go ahead.
no, not that I know of, unless I think of something later.
Okay.
All right. We're going to Lauren Casey.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Hi, Camille. I went all through public school. I was mainstreamed. And that was back in the 60s, and then I graduated high school in 72. But when I was in elementary school, that's when they started to because I went, I was losing my vision. And at that point, and when I was younger, up to 3rd grade, I could use regular print. And then I went to large print in 4th grade, and then after that, they had come to me and they said, "How would you like to learn Braille?" And I said, "Yes." So they started teaching me Braille, and I had Braille books at that point then, and I was able to go in the reading groups at school and read with everybody else with my Braille books.
Yay.
And then I also, at that same time, they were teaching me how to use the cane and to get around with the cane. And but then when I was in high school, they didn't really have that many Braille books, so they introduced me to, at that time it was called Recording for the Blind, and so then I was able to get my books there recorded, or I would use a reader.
Mm. Good.
Okay, we all set there?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Steve Seabird.
Hi, Camille. I didn't know you. I've heard your name. I went to Perkins from 68 to 82. Yeah, I thought it was interesting when you were talking about I was always legally blind, whatever you want to call it, but I kind of remember asking to learn Braille, and they said, "Oh, you're not going to need that. You can see." And lo and behold, my vision's gotten a lot worse, and I learned Braille a few years ago at the Carroll Center. But I remember, like you were saying about the visual, I was actually getting headaches, like when a print reader reads too much. I was like, that's fascinating. How, like you, but the thing with the like you were saying about people, like you were shy and all that. I remember at Perkins I was like 16, and somebody was all over me for not knowing about eye contact. It's like you don't teach that. You don't. That's learned by like instinctively by. So anyway, it was like, you kind of have to. You really can't, especially a totally blind person. You can look in that direction, but you can't have true eye contact. But of course, it's always good to. But even today, it's like I'm less shy, and if somebody says I wasn't talking, I'll say, well, sorry. But because that happens a lot. I think it's a very because you can't see people looking at you, even if you're facing them, or so that's a challenge that I think is going to be always ongoing. So you just have to do your best and not worry about it, and say, hey, I wasn't talking to you. I'll say, well, you don't know what you're missing.
That's a good one.
So thanks. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Anything else, Steve?
No, that's about it.
Okay. You're welcome. Alice Massa. Alice Massa. All right, we'll get back to you, Alice. Cleora Boyd.
Ah. Well, something else I need to tell the guy is that it doesn't help for me to give him the check ahead of time. If he's mowing in the backyard, I can't hear a thing. I'm wondering, I didn't know that the reading Braille went through the visual cortex. Maybe I should redouble my efforts. Problem that I have, I was at least sighted well enough, to make it through school. Mm-hmm. And didn't even know I had a visual impairment. But everything is sort of mixed up. The things, I guess, that I couldn't see are stored in audio memory, and things that I could see, like math and stuff like that, is in visual memory. And what I hear, I get these tapes and stuff. Like when I was going through college, I got the tapes from recordings for the blind. Yeah. It just kind of goes in one ear and out the other. There's
I know.
That I know. I would hear it on the tape. I know this, but it must be stored in visual memory because it makes no sense. I have to relearn it. One question I wanted to ask, you said they put it on your transcript. Did they put that you were on probation, or did they put that you were blind on your transcript?
They said I was on probation for blindness.
Wow. It wasn't because you were partying too much. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Really. Well, not only that, what business is it of anybody else's that she's blind?
It didn't stop me from getting my 3 jobs afterwards.
That's good.
But still, that would be a violation of privacy, right?
Okay, forget it.
That would be a privacy violation.
Oh, yeah. No.
So, well, great. You're only slightly older than I am, so.
Okay.
I graduated in '69, so I guess that makes us about 4 years apart.
There you go.
But I didn't get a chance until I was diagnosed as having RP, so that kind of put me behind, I guess. But that's okay.
You caught up.
Okay. Now we're going to go back and see if Alice Massa is available. Alice? All right. Jeff Friedlander.
Hey, what was it? It would seem that sometimes, although I never had to go through that, sometimes you don't get the material as well when you through audio, but sometimes you can get it better through Braille than through readers.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And then you end up getting the books done in Braille anyway, then look at it later.
Well, we didn't have any Braille, so we had...
Oh, no, right. But I'm just saying you could... well, sometimes then you just flunked out then if you couldn't deal with it.
A lot of trees for the Braille paper that we used.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Anything else, Jeff?
I couldn't think of any at the moment. I could go back.
Okay. Karen Crowder. Karen Crowder.
I have a question for you. Yes, I'm here. I wanted to ask you, how did you do your book reports if you couldn't read Braille, or were you able to get some of the books in the library and do it that way, or talking books?
We had a nice little library. At that time, we did not have a library in Connecticut, but Oak Hill had a wonderful little library. And so, yes, I got many of them that way. And also, some of the books that we read in English, I was able to get from my library, which at that time was New York's library.
Oh, and I know when I did book reports my senior year, I'll have to admit, I did it mostly through audio.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I can't read Braille, because I can. I did one or two of the book reports in Braille, but several I did on audio because that's the only way that were available.
Sure, that's what we had to do.
Yeah. But it sounds like you had a fascinating experience with going through high school. I wish Perkins had that sort of thing for a senior year, but they didn't.
High. They did it, I think, in the 80s for a year.
I went to Watertown High in the 82 for...
But in the 60s they did.
No, they didn't in the 60s. But
no, they didn't in the 60s. So how many were in the school in Watertown High?
I went to Watertown High for psychology and introductory computer class.
Oh, neat.
It was like the first, I think it was, maybe not the first year, but it was the first couple years they had the program, and they called us pioneers, but I guess you guys were doing it way before us, so they lied to me.
You got to take technical stuff, and that was even better.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're going to go back to Alice again. Alice, are you there now?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had to call in a second time. I don't know why I wasn't being heard. I'm sorry. Camille, I was saying earlier, I don't expect at all for you to remember me, but I certainly remember meeting you in 1989 at the ACB National Convention. At that time, it was at Richmond, Virginia.
That's right.
And I just always wanted to thank you because you and your golden retriever guide dog were such an inspiration to me.
Oh, thank you.
I was already thinking about getting my first guide dog, and a year later, in March of 90, I received my first guide dog, which happened to be a golden retriever.
Yay!
And I've had guide dogs ever since. And I just always wanted to be able to thank you for how much you inspired me at that convention.
Great. I know how
well
you
worked with your guide dog and how you got around the big convention center and so forth. And my question for you is, do I remember correctly, did you a few years ago write a book and have a book published or self-published?
Well, it's published by a Small Potatoes man that prints them on demand, and I can give anyone more information later. I used a cane for 17 years and then decided, because I was hit by a careless driver on the sidewalk in Springfield on a rainy day, he had dirty windows and he didn't see my cane, but God saved my life. And so I decided that even though I was afraid of dogs, I would get a dog.
Excuse me, Bob?
Yes, Jeff.
I was speaking of that. Camille, I don't know if I told you, back in January of 97, I was walking to the bus on a rainy day on Vine and 15th, going to Vine to try to catch the bus. And I veered out of the crosswalk, and as a result, I was hit by a pickup truck.
Ooh, scary.
But was fine on top of that.
They were.
Yeah.
That never should have happened.
Wow.
Yep, and I asked him, I didn't want to argue because you don't do that. I said, how much are you going to fine me? He said $66.
Oh,
I didn't get to pay it. I ended up at Good Samaritan Hospital.
Oh, how awful.
With tailbone fracture and bruises.
Terrible.
Okay, according to my calculations, I think we have 3 other check-ins, according to my count, that I have not identified yet. Any new check-ins? Okay, any new check-ins? We've talked with 8 people. It says 13, so minus me and Camille, there should be 3 more out there.
Oh.
All right, well, if anybody else has a question that already asked one, we still have a few moments.
I just wanted to clarify. So you're saying, Camille, that even if someone is born, never could see, and they're learning Braille, it's still through the visual center?
That's right. That's
wow,
right.
that's amazing.
In fact, that was a recent discovery.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, I remember reading about that too.
That is fascinating.
About it with
Fascinating, but I can see where it would be.
I spoke with Eileen Akers, and she was a long-time teacher of the visually impaired, and she reiterated that to me.
Wow.
So I wonder
how the brain works.
Yeah, it is.
Camille, I just wanted to tell you I'm Joni Leonard, and that I think I'm the oldest person in this group, and I did attend Perkins for a postgraduate year, but all through school, I used a slate and stylus through.
Yes, me too.
Oh, through
right through graduate both,
school.
Brailler.
Yes.
Well, I mean, at home I had a Brailler to use, but at school they didn't even want to hear the clicking of my slate and stylus in the school that I went to, and I was mainstream.
Thin paper.
Oh yeah,
typing paper.
Look where we've come since then.
Even thin paper, they didn't want to. I had some teachers that said, "Stop that clicking noise."
Oh, I know.
Oh wow, that's weird.
That goes to show that they just did not want to accept visually impaired people in their class, and that was an excuse.
I have kind of a question and a comment.
Jan.
I told you I'd think of something later. One thing I noticed, and granted I didn't go to Perkins for high school, but I did go to Perkins for rehab. As Camille knows, she was my counselor, and she got me out of some interesting little scrapes. But anyway, one thing I noticed about the teachers at Perkins versus the teachers in high school, the teachers that I had in high school, I was their first blind student most of the time.
Oh, wow.
And most of them were pretty good. I was the first totally blind person to go through my city, high school. There were some partially sighted kids, maybe, but I was the first totally blind person. And I felt that they were very open to what I could and couldn't do, and they were very good about allowing me to do things as far as doing homework and reports, and they were, helpful when I needed it. But I felt that a lot of the Perkins teachers had already made up their mind what a blind student could and couldn't do, and I felt like I didn't get that in public school the way I got it at Perkins, because there were a couple of teachers that I felt were very prejudiced or very
you were
very how do I put it? Very they had their own ideas about how things should be, and I was a young adult then. I wasn't a high school student, and for one, I was never told or never explained, and Camille and I talked about it later, and kind of it was partly my fault but when they had staffings, I wasn't aware that I was allowed to be there, and I didn't think of the fact that I could have been.
They didn't tell you. They could have told you.
Yeah.
Especially being a young
adult.
I
think the reason Camille didn't tell me back then was I think she thought I knew.
Yeah.
I thought you knew. Yeah, I did think you knew.
Huh.
Oh, well.
Because we've talked about it since then.
I know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Donahue.
Peter?
Yes, I have a question that's kind of related, and it's something that I've discussed with some people based on my experience in school for the blind. Camille, through the Weaver program, were you able to make connections that would allow you to attempt some activities or be a part of any type of special interest group or organization through your connections at Weaver and take advantage of opportunities that weren't available at Oak Hill? And I'm going to follow this with a comment after your question.
Unfortunately, the amount of homework I had
honors,
precluded me from being able to do that. And I also took piano because Mr. Hayes allowed us to take piano in our senior year, and I wanted to do that.
Do you think it took you more time than the average student to do the work. I mean, I found that in college it
sure.
took me more time.
Oh,
yeah.
Actually, college was easier. College was easier than high school because I was able to get my books on tape.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, I still used readers, but not as many, and we had less time in class, because you only have 16 credits. You have a lot more time to study.
Right.
I just want to make my comment.
Sorry.
Sure.
Go ahead, Peter.
Okay. The reason I brought that up is, as I said, as I've told people, I've had experience with 2 schools for the blind, and each had its own strengths and weaknesses. But one of the things that I noticed that was common to Perkins, and Jan touched on this a little bit ago, and the fact that sometimes some of us found that, people out in society as a whole seem to have a much more open-minded to our participation in certain activities than the schools for the blind did. Couple examples that I'm talking about. There are a number of organizations of blind golfers around, and the U.S. Blind Golf Association was most likely around when you and I were in school.
Right.
Oak Hill and Perkins, for that matter, why did they not partner with these organizations to expose their students to the game of golf and grow the sport among the blind? Likewise, another organization called Ski for Light was around. Why did these schools not partner with them to introduce blind people to the sport of skiing? Now, Oak Hill had a wonderful opportunity to do this. Did you ever have the chance of having to go up and down that sunny hill that went? Oh, yes. Remember that thing.
Now, was that cross country or downhill skiing you're talking about?
That they could have done introductory downhill lessons on that hill. That thing was huge. And depending on your schedule, depending on your class schedule, if you had instructional swim in the morning, you got to hike that thing down and up in the morning. And then if you went to free swim or some other activity that was held in the pool building or even on the hill itself, you did it again. You got your exercise on that thing. And just one more remark and I'm done, is I can also vouch for that library. One of the things that I used to do a lot is they had a number of good old open reel tapes that had programs that were produced by various college radio stations and public education services around the country, and I used to listen to a lot of those for hours on end, and they were dramatized like radio programs. They had if titles like "Let Science Tell Us" or the Indiana School of the Sky book series, Adventures in Research. If that rings a bell with anybody, you know what I'm talking about. But they had a lot of those, and they were really awesome. I wish we could find those. Yes, they were, and I wish that I could find those. They're very hard to find, and I don't know if Perkins had any of those. Anyway, it is good to hear from you, and so I don't take any more time. I'm just going to go ahead and sign off and let other folks say what they're going to say, and appreciate hearing from you. That you're doing well.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, I was wrong earlier. We spoke to 9 people, which means we have 2 people that haven't checked in yet, according to my calculations. So if you're still there and have not asked your question yet, go right ahead. All right. Any more questions? Camille, it was a pleasure having you this evening. Really was. And, of course, I remember you from Perkins. And you've attended a couple of our reunions that I've had. And we really loved having you with them. We hope you come again to them. And we thank you for appearing on Branco Broadcast.
I appreciate it. The best to all of you.
You too.